What's up, YouTubers? As you can see, it's a blistering 72 here in Xela, Guatemala. Gotta wear the shorts today. Anyways, for the viewers who don't know, in Central America, at least in Guatemala, it's the dry season. It's kind of warm, not too warm. I'm up here in the mountains where, in the Altiplano, where it doesn't really get hot. It's what some people call the eternal spring. Here in Xela, we're so high it's a little bit chilly during the day, but if you're out in the sun, it can feel hot. You have to take off your jacket. I think somewhere in May or June was when the rainy season starts. And it just depends on the year if it rains a lot or if it doesn't. I've been down here years, it didn't seem to rain that much. In other years, it rained quite a bit. Anyways, on with the show. I got a question in the mailbag. A viewer is asking about banking passports from Africa, specifically. I believe he saw Expat World or one of those websites. I haven't even Googled it to see if they're still up, but Expat World, I think it's a chap in Singapore. I might be wrong. I don't know if he still has a website, and I have no idea if these banking passports right now today are still available. My understanding is some of them might be, but the question is, what do I think of them? I don't think they're worthwhile, and I don't think they're useful in any way. And even if you can get one, unless you can actually go to Africa and live there and use it, that specific country, they're useless. Let me say why. Even back in the day when people got those things, maybe they were useful before they were being promoted on the internet, maybe, but not anymore. Any bank, like in Switzerland or in Singapore or Hong Kong or Andorra, Austria, or let's say the Channel Islands even, or the Isle of Man, or Sark, they're not going to let you use a banking passport, especially from Africa, even if you acquired it legally. They know exactly what you're up to. And here's the thing, if you're an American citizen, I can't speak for everyone, but in most first world countries, but especially if you're from the United States, there's no more bank secrecy for you, even if you get another second or third passport, especially if it's in your Christian name, because they know exactly who you are. That's one reason it's not very valuable. But the days when you could get a second or third passport as an American citizen to get secrecies, they're gone now. Like, they'll still say, well, you were born in the States, you still live in the States, and we won't even let you open an account. Or if they let you open an account, they will say, you got to fit out this tax information, basically your W-9, so they can report to the U.S. government your interest, dividends, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. That's basically what it amounts to. That's why these banking passports are worthless. Now, maybe if you're from Latin America and you want to get an African passport, maybe then in that case it's useful. Maybe. Here's another thing. If you're in Africa and you fly on that passport from wherever you got it to, like, say, Europe or whatever, first off, depending on what the country is, you're going to need a visa. Second off, even if you get there, you get the visa, most countries are going to say, oh, you were born in the U.S. or you were born somewhere else. We want to see that ID to open a bank account. Now, that's if it's like a place like Switzerland or Singapore, Hong Kong, Isle of Man, the Channel Islands. Any legitimate banking haven won't accept it. Now, some of the not so legitimate havens, maybe they'll accept it for ID and to open a bank account, but you can do so little with that bank account that I would say it's worthless, and I wouldn't pursue it. Now, here's yet another reason why they're not very good. They charge you so much money for these things in the past, like $2,500 to I heard $5,000 in the past. And let's assume you get it. The reason I say that is because some of those passports are from promoters where you could send for a smaller amount product, like say a book, say $100 book. You buy your money order, you send it to the offshore address, and they don't deliver your book. Even though it's a money order, at least in the States, if you get a money order, you can get a copy of wherever it was cashed, And then you can see, I did this one time. It was cashed in the Isle of Man. It wasn't a corporate name, it was a single name, which I don't recall, I don't care. And suffice to say, I didn't get the books. Also, too, back in those days, you could do legal name changes really easy and change your identity that way. I'm kind of being not really informative about this. I'm just saying there's a way you can open an account in one name and then legally change it through a lawyer without showing ID, which you can't really do anymore, but I don't want to talk too much about that anymore. Anyways, back in those days when there was somewhat bank secrecy, you couldn't go to the bank. You could. You could say, hey, I bought this product and they didn't send it to me. You cashed it, you gave the money. I want my money back. You can't do that anymore. Or back then you couldn't do that. Maybe now you could alert the bank to someone like that and maybe get their account closed. I don't know that you get your money back. But that's one thing that some of these things, some of these promoters, they're gonna tell you you're gonna get this password, but you're not gonna get it. I don't think. If you really believe in that, you can go find a lawyer in Africa, or many lawyers in Africa, and usually these things are you invest $5,000 or $10,000 in some government scheme or program, which is legitimate. You can check it out, and then they give you a passport. I don't think it's worth it. I'll tell you why. Because one, if you really want bank privacy in today's age, the only way you're going to get it is to have an LLC, a SA corporation, anything like that. You're not going to have any protection if you use your legit government ID, even if you use an offshore passport, unless you change your name somewhere in that process to separate you from your old name. Unless you do that, you're not going to get any bank privacy. The only way you're going to get bank privacy and discretion nowadays is if you have an LLC, if you have a SA corporation that's not in your name. I want to stress that's not in your name. It breaks the trail. And these things won't be private if you use your real bank account and transfer money into the offshore one. The government can figure that out pretty easy. Hopefully my viewers don't know that, but if you can discreetly get that money into another account, the corporate account that's not in your name, then that's how you get it. And my point is, there's a YouTuber. His name is thinking now, what's his name? He's an American. He has a channel on banking and other subjects, 2 or 3 channels. I'm blanking on his name. It's Cameron. It's Mr. Cameron. He just points out how way back in the day, his business partner, a lady who's since passed away, set up a corporate account that he uses to this day, even though she's passed on. Nothing's in his name. Now, is this tax efficient like to zero? No, but it doesn't pay that much tax. But I'm not claiming, you don't pay any tax. All I'm saying is you can have these assets in your name. You can pass assets into another corporate name, whether it's the U.S. or Latin America or Asia. If you do it right and you bake the trail, it's going to be very, very difficult for anyone to find your money. Very difficult, unless you're on the government's poop list, unless you did something really bad that you're on the government's poop list, which might be tax evasion, might be other things. But even then, even for minor tax evasion, I don't think they really care. Those kinds of assets are going to be way more secret and it's cheaper to get. Let me just point out, you could get an LLC or an SA corporation and pay the fees every year. This is going to be tremendously less than getting a second pass. It's going to be tremendously less. And you'll have real privacy. If you set it up right, if you send money to lawyers, or if you send money in an anonymous way, then it will be private. Even with an LLC in the U.S., that's true. That's Glendon Cameron. He has a lot of videos on it. I think people are going to be skeptical, but even he, who self-identifies as on the left, a moderate guy on the left, points out you can set these multiple of these things up without your tax ID number, without your Social Security number. And if you set it up right, and if you transfer money into it right, it will be fairly anonymous. Now, sure, you should have another one that's, in your name, paying a lot of your bills so you don't come under suspicion, but you get what I'm saying. This is how you really get bank privacy. You don't get it from a banking passport. Banking passports worked before they became so popular and got online, where people are being sold online. In fact, most of these people who are promoting them, they're just offshore. You send the money to, like, say, Malaysia, and your money disappears. And if you do get a document, it could be fake. It won't be useful. Even if it's real, if you're an American, it won't be useful because your bank will eventually figure out you're an American and they'll close out the account, or they won't do anything, or they'll freeze the account. There's been countless times when people had their money frozen and they didn't get their money back. Or it took a long time. They had to self-identify who they were, and get in a lot of trouble. That's why these things, getting these banking passports, I don't think are going to be really effective. If you get a real legitimate second passport through going through residency, and then you do legal name changes, and then you do some other things, yes, you can get off the radar of Uncle Sam. And yes, to the viewer, this takes a long time. I understand that. If you can't or you're unwilling to do that, the only way you're going to get privacy is to talk to a really good lawyer, a really good accountant, really trustworthy people like that, and they'll set you up. Like, I'm trying to think, I'm blanking again. The How to Be Invisible, JJ Luna. People like JJ Luna know what I'm talking about. His fees are high. If you can do stuff like that, yeah, you can bank almost anyone in the world privately. But most people aren't willing to jump through those hoops. And most people, they don't trust their judgment, like I said in a previous video, to trust how things are really done in today's age. They really believe a lot of stuff, like a lot of stuff you see online in YouTube videos aren't the truth. Not everything, but a lot. A lot of it's very misleading. You're going to go down paths where you spend up to, say, $50,000, and you're not going to have anything that gives you any kind of privacy and security. In fact, you're going to, when you think about it, you set up everything in your own name, you transfer everything in a legal way. So the IRS, the Treasury Department has a footpath right to where your assets are, and you realize you paid all that money for nothing. And I've actually come across people who become clients of these blue chip lawyers who set it up that way, and they were disappointed because they paid $50,000. The only good it did them, it's in another jurisdiction. But the Treasury Department, the IRS, was led right to their money. So it didn't do them any good from a privacy point of view. That's all I want to say about that. But to answer the question on banking passports from Africa, I think they're useless. I think a properly set up LLC, SA corporation, outside of your country of birth, nominee account is going to give you way more privacy, and then your privacy is going to depend on how you transfer that money into. If you don't use a proper way to transfer money from point A to point B, right, that can be a way that authorities can find your money. If you go transfer your money anonymously, which can still be done, it's difficult, not easy, not always cheap, not convenient for people. Cash, bake the trail with cash, money orders, and then there's way more to this that I'm not going to get into here. But if you can't do that, you're not going to have a lot of banking privacy anymore. You're just not going to. In fact, if you really want to know how these things are done, talk to your U.S. banker, like banks in the U.S., Switzerland, Canada, the U.K. They know how these things are done, and they're not cheap or easy, and they're only for certain clients. I'll put that, they're only for certain clients. I'm thinking of that Warren Buffett bank because one of my relatives was basically a trust officer, so I know how some of those people get their assets really, really private without even really going offshore. But as you can guess, it's through nominees, and it's very, very effective. Anyways, that's all I got for now. Like, share, leave a comment. Thank you. Have a good evening.